Who hasn't dreamed of cruising around in a flying car? While the brains behind Google's Moonshot factory has a plan to make it a reality.
And soaring over traffic during rush hour would make your morning commute almost something to look forward to. Plus, how would you feel about Dr. Robot handling your next dental surgery? We'll find out why a robot's guiding hand is the future of care.
As if going to the dentist wasn't scary enough for some people. Hopefully the results calm their jitters. Beyond Innovation starts now.
There's no question the world needs to shift to renewable power sources, but unfortunately, it's easier said than done.
Capturing energy isn't the issue, it's storing it for later use that's been a challenge. Traditional storage technology simply can't hold enough energy long enough to make renewables viable as a primary power source.
Until now, that is. A startup called Hydrostor has developed a way to preserve energy for more than 24 hours by pumping compressed air deep underground. And best of all, it can be built just about anywhere.
It's a truly impressive solution that's opening up a world of possibilities for green-minded utilities. For the first time, they can now plan for an energy future in which fossil fuels remain buried for good.
One of the biggest challenges to widespread adoption of renewable energy sources is long-term energy storage. And Curtis, at Hydrostor, you've created a solution that uses water and gravity to have a zero emission source for long-term energy storage. How does your solution work?
We adopt construction techniques and equipment from oil and gas industry. And what we do is we sink a shaft about 600 meters down, hollow out some space in rock, flood it with water. We then use natural gas equipment to compress air, send it down and lift water up, hold it in, and when the grid needs power, you open the valve, the weight of that water brings the air up, it spins a turbine, and air goes back to the atmosphere, and you have low-cost, long-duration energy storage that can be built anywhere there's rock.
And the cost to dig, it sounds like a big project to dig a big hole. You had the mining shaft example where you're able to reuse some legacy infrastructure from mining. How much does that save costs, and what do you have to do if you have to build a fresh hole?
What we tend to do is we compete with natural gas and coal plants, and at that scale, it is very cost effective. But to prove it out initially, we started with smaller projects. It would not be cost effective there, so we looked for pre-existing holes in the ground that we could repurpose, and so we've built a couple of those to prove it works, and now we're focused on the much bigger projects where the grid needs them.
What is the cost comparison between the traditional ways of storing energy and yours?
As there's more renewables on the grid, you need more storage and you need longer duration storage. So batteries work really good for 15 minutes or shift an hour here and at the residential level. But when you go to the grid and you start moving major blocks of power from day to night, batteries are just not cost effective. To give you a sense, adding 1 hour of duration per kilowatt hour of a battery is about $300. Adding 1 hour of ours is about $20. And so much more cost effective. In line with that of pumped hydro, the issue with pumped hydro is it can only go where there's a dam. What we do is we bring that cost profile anywhere you could build batteries, really. And so now we bring the best of the flexibly sited batteries with the low cost of pumped hydro.
What do you think you'll do when these types of projects are widely deployed in Hydrostores and many, many more places? Will you be able to replace a lot of the battery infrastructure that will be deployed, or is this going to exist in tandem with batteries?
Yeah, you really need batteries. They can respond in milliseconds. They can tuck into someone's garage where they need it on the end of a feeder. We're not going to make sense in those applications, but what we see is replacing every coal and gas plant on the planet. If batteries and other things haven't done it, we have the flexibly sited and cost to go in and take out those plants.
There's been a lot of investment in infrastructure in coal and oil and gas plants. CapEx generally, capital expenditures generally, are a challenge for utilities. So how do you model that where you're able to get enough availability of capital to actually make your solutions work?
What we found is the capital to build isn't the issue, it's getting the contract. And as utilities are adding more renewable to the grid and they realize their transmission lines are in the wrong spot, they're getting more creative in giving more contracts. Once we have that contract, the supply chains we use are oil and gas. They exist and can build hundreds of these all at once. And the capital seems available from the capital markets if you have the right contract and what we call a bankable solution that people know will work.
Innovation is happening right under our noses, no matter where we are in the world. Let's take a look at some groundbreaking technologies in development around the globe. first we travel to upstate New York for some engineering ingenuity that's sure to float your boat. Researchers at the University of Rochester have developed a metal that's literally unsinkable. It's made up of two thin metal plates that have nano-sized patterns etched onto them using special lasers. These designs trap air molecules between the two sheets, making the metal extremely water repellent. When the metal is pushed down into the water, the trapped air keeps water out and forces the metal back to the surface. The researchers hope this technique can be used to build ships and life jackets that float even after they're ruptured. The technology could one day save countless lives at sea. Next, we move to Mexico for an eco-friendly fashion trend making waves. You're looking at 100% vegan leather. Yes, you heard that right. It's made from the leaves of the nopal cactus, which is abundant in Mexico and requires no water to grow. The cactus leather is soft and comfortable, yet durable enough to stand up to the wear and tear of everyday life. And most importantly, it's biodegradable and free of the harmful chemicals found in leathers made from animals or plastics. That makes it an environmentally sound choice for eco-conscious consumers. Cactus leather is already being used to create clothing, furniture, and even car interiors. Who would have thought such an untouchable plant would eventually become a fashion trendsetter? And lastly, we land in Ireland for a new addition to elderly care. This chatty character's mission is to socialize with seniors living in retirement homes. Stevie uses sensors and artificial intelligence to interact with residents who might not get enough FaceTime with staff or their peers. The robot is versatile enough to carry one-on-one conversations and play games like bingo with larger groups. Its human-like features such as facial expressions and arm movements also help make it more relatable to elderly residents. Stevie buzzes around on four wheels, so it's able to reach out to residents with mobility issues. The robot has been a smash hit at its first few retirement homes, and the hope is to soon bring the technology to communities everywhere. And that's our wrap of the top innovations from around the world.
Coming up, aerial ambitions. Sebastian Thrun spent years designing radical new tech for Google. Now he wants to fill our skies with flying cars. We'll discover his vision for the future and how much longer we're going to have to wait. You're watching Beyond Innovation.
Professional sports has always been about numbers. How fast did you run? How far did you throw? How many points did you tally? And of course, what was the final score?
While sports fans care most about the score sheet, athletes and their coaches have a different focus. They want insight in how to squeeze the most out of training sessions. That's because optimal practice often leads to peak performance.
This desire for deeper insight has spurred a wave of technologies that quantify and analyze an athlete's every move. And Anthony, you had a chance to speak to two entrepreneurs that were at the cusp of this trend.
I did, and they've each designed technologies that offer athletes a fuller understanding of their mind and body. That way they can push themselves to their limits, and then even further the next time without sacrificing their safety. And with that knowledge in hand, sports stars can potentially reach heights they never thought possible. Athletes around the world want to be able to track how they're doing and figure out how to improve their performance and achieve peak performance. And Ben, at Performance Phenomics, you've created a platform that uses medical scans to start to be able to predict where an athlete can go in their career. Where can they go? How high can they get? And on the other side of it, Rami, after an athlete's already in the field with Push, you're actually collecting a bunch of data around what the athlete's doing and helping iterate on where the performance can improve. So Rami, I want to start with you. Getting all that data is obviously got to be a really big challenge. How does the technology do that?
In terms of the data itself, the sensors, it's super small and simple. It's really all about building the algorithms and the software experience that helps make it easy for the coaches and the athletes to do that. You can basically get a fully guided experience in the gym. So instead of just following a templated boilerplate workout program, you can actually now get real-time feedback that can drive your training. So instead of blindly lifting the same load every time, you can actually know exactly the right weight for you to make sure that you hit your goals.
And so when you pile up that data, you get a good feedback loop going. And Ben, you're trying to see that on the front end of it.
In Performance Phenomics, what we use is, obviously, as you mentioned, MRI technology, and we're using a multimodal MRI to look at that. So we're looking at multiple data types on each individual to start to understand their central tendencies, where there may be asymmetries, impairments that we can help remedy. The easiest anecdote to use is really we're 23andMe for the brain. So we're suggestive in nature, not prescriptive. And it's this notion of taking a true quantitative baseline of an individual. The structure of your brain is actually fixed from the time you're in your mid to late teens. And so the earlier we can get those scans done, the better we can understand, your performance potential, the ceiling that you have to perform, as well as any kind of central tendencies, and then try and correct for those as you age.
You have a similar kind of feedback opportunity with Rami with push.
We basically measure the output. So for you to basically understand the differences between two different sizes of an athlete, and that's actually one of the biggest causes of injuries, is asymmetry, when you have an imbalance between your left and right. So our technology helps measure the output, power output, on both left and right sides.
There's a whole lot of consumers out there that need these applications as well. What do you see as the first best use case for consumers?
So what we're really focusing on is when you first get the push platform, you'll actually be getting a baseline assessments across multiple different tests that relate to the sport that you're passionate about, whether it's snowboarding or surfing or any type of sport, squash or tennis. We'll have a bunch of baselines that we'll test you on. And then from there, we'll track your progression along an 8 to 12-week training program, make sure that those KPIs have improved at the end of it. So it's really sport specific, but in general, we're focused on improving your power, speed, and stability.
Yeah, and I think for us, the performance, it's a bit different, and it actually starts with my personal story. So I was formerly a hockey player, drafted in 2010 into the NHL, and I decided to step away from the game due to concussions. And so for me, I think at Performance, we've always had this notion that we want to change the way brain disorders are handled through a quantitative nature. And I think when it comes to concussions in specific, it's a qualitative injury. Everyone's asking you questions, and there's no quantitative imaging biomarker right now when looking at concussions. And so that's really what we're working on. We are going down a path right now of a regulated medical device, and I think that can scale, and you can see potentially in the future insurance covering this, or every athlete or every kid has to go through a scan so that they have a proper quantitative baseline.
Sebastian Thrun is one of the technology industry's most visionary minds. The serial entrepreneur and academic is best known for founding Google's secretive Moonshot division. But these days, he's returning to his roots in autonomous robotics, work that's won him accolades the world over. Thrun's new venture, Kitty Hawk, hopes to take self-flying cars out of science fiction and into our skies. Yet the technology won't take flight if the transportation rules and regulations around them remain up in the air. Thrun has a bold vision of what our aerial highways will look like and the technological leaps needed to make them possible.
There's a lot written about autonomous vehicles, but when it comes to autonomous flying vehicles, people are a little unsure. So Sebastian, what would a daily commute look like when we have fully deployed, functioning, autonomous flying vehicles in our everyday lives?
Just picture yourself being stuck in traffic and nothing is moving. And now imagine your car had this wonderful little button that would lift you up by 300 feet. And you could now fly over the highway and not be stuck anymore. That's maybe a little bit simplistic. The vehicles we do build don't really have wheels, but they can take off vertically like a helicopter, and they can fly on a straight line at maybe 200 miles per hour to where you're going. We need to have a highway system, an imaginary, invisible highway system over our cities, where these vehicles can then go into an invisible but well-defined highway lane.
And so then we're coming a lot closer to actually seeing autonomous flying vehicles in the skies. What are some of the design features that are necessary to actually make this happen?
First and foremost, concern is safety. And the reason is if something goes wrong and you're 500 feet in the air, it's not so good. Secondly, it's been noise. We've worked really hard on making these vehicles so quiet you can't even hear them. And then finally, I want this to be a technology that's available for everybody. It can't be as expensive as a helicopter. I want it to be really affordable. In fact, I envision a future where flying to work will be cheaper than driving to work.
You're using artificial intelligence. How specifically is artificial intelligence being incorporated into the autonomous flying vehicles?
It's a big deal, and we use it at many different levels. We use it in terms of having the vehicle understand its surroundings, finding things like obstacles and power lines. And we use it for controls to make sure that the vehicle itself flies very smoothly. The vehicles we build often have 10, 12 propellers, and no human being is able to manually control 12 propellers.
So you're working on multiple products within the autonomous flying vehicle area. Which one do you see coming to market first?
The one that's the furthest ahead right now is Flyer. Flyer is, you can think of it as a human drone. We fly it mostly over border for safety purposes. And we've already had many people outside my company experience the experience of flight. That's really just a stepping stone. We're working on a second vehicle we call Heaviside, which has a big wing, and as a result can fly much faster and much further. And that's still under development.
Let's take a look at some of the limitations. For example, when it comes to flight, battery life is something to consider. How are you, tackling those kinds of limitations?
Battery is the number one, number two, number three limitations right now. And it's not just life cycles for batteries, it's also the ability to charge them. They hold relatively little energy for the weight that they have, much less than, say, gasoline or jet fuel. However, we just demonstrated this, our heaviside vehicle flew over 100 miles on a single charge plus reserves. So if your daily commute is in the range of less than 100 miles, we probably can help you.
And lastly, the most important question is, how far off do you believe we are to seeing fully deployed autonomous vehicles outside our windows?
I think we're going to see first pilots come up in the next 24 months that people can try it out and experience it. And I'd say it's going to be another, 10 years until we find cities having more flights than drives per day, but it's going to happen. There was a time when there were more horses than cars on the roads, and those times are passé. The same will happen here. At some point, we'll see more aircraft than cars in the sky.
I really liked the conversation you had with Sebastian, and the point you made about trust being such an important factor is a really pertinent one.
Well, I can totally understand why people would have difficulty with ceding direct control of a vehicle to a computer. But Sebastian brought up a really interesting point about that during his conversation.
When you fly a commercial aircraft, you're being flown 99% or more by a computer already. Many commercial aircrafts now land themselves in bad weather, and pilots are only allowed to land in good weather. We already live in a world that's highly automated, and this is no exception. I don't want every person to fly their own vehicle in any direction they want to. I would love a computer to coordinate this and make it safe.
That's the point I think people really need to understand, because when we're on a commercial airline, the majority of the flight is being flown on autopilot. So it's not an actual person flying the plane.
I think that's exactly right, Michael. But one of the things that makes people so comfortable is the knowledge that a pilot is there and could take control if there's some failure or malfunction in the automation systems. This is obviously a totally different circumstance where you're in an autonomous self-flying car, and obviously the vast majority of people would not be able to take control and salvage a situation if it got dangerous.
So it sounds like it has to be a step-by-step process, and really safety is the key, and making sure that people understand how the technology works and what happens, if something does go wrong. What are the mechanisms, the measures in place if it does?
Well, I think that's exactly right. I think that we need to think about the history of the general aviation industry and how long it took to establish all those rules and procedures. I think that with automation coming into the picture, it's going to be the same thing. We need to make sure we go incrementally, step by step, and really make sure the holistic system is as safe as possible. That said, there's still going to be some challenges.
Well, so how far away do you think we are until we see fully autonomous flying vehicles?
I'm thinking it's super cool, so I'm going to say 5 to 10 years we're going to be in the sky flying.
Well, there's no question the evolution of autonomous flying cars will continue to captivate us for years to come. How much control over a self-flying car do you think people should have? Find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter at Global Live Media and let us know. There is nothing like the thrill of racing on a Formula One circuit, unless, of course, it's in a car made of 3D printed parts. That's right, a company called Stratasys is designing components for McLaren racing vehicles. It's printing hydraulic line brackets, brake cooling ducts, and rear wing flaps using special materials reinforced with carbon fiber. Stratasys is slashing the time it takes to manufacture these parts down to mere hours instead of weeks. That helps McLaren and its partners more quickly improve their designs so their cars can be lighter and faster. In a sport where time is of the essence, every second counts.
We expect our surgeons to have robot-like precision in the operating room. Well, now they can, literally. We'll learn how mechanical guidance can improve dental surgery so that patients leave smiling every time. That's next on Beyond Innovation.
Do you know someone who's absolutely terrified of going to the dentist? Just the sound of the dentist drill gives me chills.
And why wouldn't it? All the poking and prodding is uncomfortable, if not downright painful. I feel for anyone who's had to go through a major dental operation.
Well, over 4 million dental implants are performed every year in the US alone, so there's plenty of discomfort to go around. But thankfully, there is an innovative new tool on the market that's making these surgeries less unpleasant.
A startup called Neocis has developed a robot that helps surgeons better plan and execute procedures. It's already minimizing the need for incisions, reducing the potential for error, and ultimately speeding up recovery times. Neocis co-founder and CEO Alon Mozes sees dental implants as just the first step in an exciting evolution in the dentist's chair. Throughout my lifetime, which is now 45 years, I haven't seen much development in dental care, and the technology used by dentists still reminds me of the time I was 7 years old, so scared to go in there. When I go in there today, it's the exact same situation. What is Yomi doing?
Yomi is a robot-assisted surgery system. It's useful for dentists of all kinds, general dentists, oral surgeons, periodontists, to perform dental implant surgery. So it's a very challenging procedure to do freehand. So they want to get the implant in just the right spot, and Yomi helps them plan the case ahead of time in software so they can get it exactly where they wanted. And then it helps them execute the case perfectly during surgery so they can get exactly the result they planned ahead of time. So we've been working well with the FDA, so we're now the first and only FDA-cleared robot-assisted surgery device in the dental industry.
But dentists have obviously been doing things a certain way for a very long period of time, successfully. So there's a lot of inertia to getting them to change the way they're doing things. What steps are you taking with Yomi to overcome that challenge?
One of the key advantages is that this is a robot-assistive device, right? It's not an autonomous robot. You don't just push a button and have it take over. Surgeons are very much a part of the procedure. There's always a human in the loop. So it makes the surgeons feel more comfortable. It also makes the patients feel more comfortable. And so what it does is it combines the best of both worlds. So you have the best of robotics, which is all about accuracy and dexterity and precision. And you have the best of the clinical judgment that the surgeons have accumulated. So they're still deciding how the surgery will proceed, but they're getting the physical and visual guidance from the robot arm.
What do you think is the next application for the Yomi technology beyond dental implants?
There's a broad array of procedures in the dental space that are interesting. You've got dental implants as kind of a first step surgery, which is a huge market and a big opportunity and a good clinical match for this kind of technology. But the technology that we built can naturally be adapted to other dental procedures. So as you start looking beyond the normal dental implant, you also have what they call edentulous procedures, patients who have no teeth whatsoever, where they need a full arch of dental implants. And then you have to do other augmenting procedures like bone reduction, where you're flattening out the plane of the bone into a level space. And then beyond that, more complex implants like zygomatic up into the orbital bone, which becomes very risky. And then the other end of the spectrum, you have very simple procedures like crown milling and tooth preparation, where general dentists are really artisans for the most part. There's not a lot of consistency, which makes it really ripe for automation and robotics across the entire dental industry.
What's the entry point cost, though, for a dentist?
So with our background in robotic surgery, we've been able to develop the system for much lower cost. So most robotic surgery systems that you hear about are selling for $1 million, $2 million. With our experience, we've been able to develop the system much lower cost. And so we're selling for about $200,000 to a dentist, which if they finance over 5 years, ends up being roughly $3,500 a month. If you look at the dental implant procedure, most dentists are charging $3,000 to $4,000 per implant to a patient, and they're doing hundreds of implants in a year. So if they can get 1 or 2 more implants per month, they can start justifying the system and get all the clinical benefits and business benefits that come with this kind of technology.
I'm fascinated to see how robotics finds its way into all sorts of medical procedures. The level of accuracy and repeatability that a machine can deliver means so many unnecessary complications could soon be a thing of the past. The amount of money, let alone pain, that patients can save is incredible.
Well, I can see why some surgeons might initially be skeptical about the need for robotics in their practice, but pretty soon, the results that devices like Yomi deliver will make them indispensable, especially as their cost falls.
If you come across some breakthrough technology like Yomi that you think we should know about, let us know online. You can find us on the web, on Facebook, and on Twitter at Global Live Media.
Make sure to join us next time, and remember, the future lies just beyond innovation.